Today, we're talking about something that is near and dear to both of our lives. So, you're going to peel back the curtain a little bit and hear from Jeremiah and Laura and how we talk about finances as a couple, as two business owners, as parents, as husband and wife, as people that bring our own backgrounds and relationship with money, relationships that we've inherited, things that we've come up with all on our own. And we bring that together and we stir the pot. And here we are as two financial planners, and we want to talk openly and honestly about how we talk about our finances in the Lee family household. We hope some of this is helpful to our listeners. So,
Yeah.
Jeremiah, are you ready? Ready to get a
Yeah.
little personal?
Yeah, we'll try to. Yeah. Well, and part of this too is not advice, in the sense of this is just, I think, us sharing what we've been through. And it's interesting that we work in this space. So we have the same conversation with couples on a regular basis. But I think starting the idea that when you and I have conversations, other people have conversations, it's not just about the money. It is about money, but it's a lot about the emotions, the security, the uncertainty, the assumptions. Yeah, all those things get tied up. And we even laugh that we struggle. We'll set out a mindset, a game plan. Hey, we're going to meet every other week, and we're going to talk about this. We're going to stay on top of that budget. And, then a few weeks later, we realize, oh, weren't we going to meet about this? Did we have a time to talk about that?
Because life is busy, lifestyle creep is real, just trying to get through the day. And so we take shortcuts here and there, guarding the time in your schedule to talk about. Quite frankly, most of the time what we experience when we talk to other couples about how often they talk to each other about their budget or their spending, at any stage of marriage, most of the time we hear we really just don't. We just don't talk about it. Sometimes we hear that there's conflict, which, most of our listeners who are in a relationship probably realize that is a very real thing, is conflict over finances. We'll talk a little bit about that. But I would say more often than not, if you agree, Jeremiah, we just hear we just really don't talk about our finances.
Yeah, I think it's what I tend to see is a divide and conquer. And we do a similar thing to say, hey, you're responsible for these bills and these accounts. You're responsible for this spending. And, she does the investing and I do the budgeting, or, he does the whatever it may be. But I see a lot of divide and conquer, and then, just allocating jobs and then not really connecting and reconnecting. And part of that, I think, is natural, right? Like you said, we're trying to get through. Part of that is really missing some value there, and missing some even levels of intimacy and connection, and being on the same page to move forward. That really could be. And the big one that we talk about a lot is, what are some of the questions that we're not asking? How do you feel about our finances? We get to be the ones that bring those up in a meeting, but in between you and I, it's sometimes hard to bring those up because it's feelings of, am I providing well? Are you providing well? Are we on track? Are we agreeing to the goals we set out? Are we behind? Are we ahead? All of that. So I think just to tell people in general, it's not an easy conversation, but it's a good conversation, and it's worth putting some guidelines or guide rails so that you can have a healthy form of this type of conversation.
Yeah. And I would encourage our listeners that any time is a good time to start. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling behind, or you're feeling uncomfortable already, or you're simply saying that's not really necessary. We're on the same page. Life is good. Let me tell you that there's going to be events that you can't anticipate in your future where having alignment on your finances is going to be helpful. So starting a habit before you need the impact and the benefit of that habit is one that I would encourage. And I'll just start. I want to kind of roll back time a little bit to when we first were married, early married, and I was raised with a financial planner dad with a lot of financial principles and discipline. And Jeremiah was raised in a very financially healthy and stable home. That was a benefit that we both brought to our marriage. But early on, just for the sake of our listeners and laying the foundation, we decided to commingle all of our finances. So what's mine is yours. Now, I know there's married couples that construct things differently. I just want to say that there's not necessarily good and bad, but as we go forward and talk about some of our experiences, just know that that's what we chose to do early on in marriage. And one of the reasons I think that became kind of an easy choice for us is that early on in our marriage, he was a student and I was working. And then there were seasons in our marriage where tables turned and I was a student and he was the one working. And so as we combined our finances, we looked at everything all together. But some of the ways that we managed our budget early on in marriage definitely needed a tune-up. And now we stand at a phase where things are a little bit more complicated also as business owners. And so as you go forward in life, your financial life is only going to get more complex. There's only going to be more questions, more protection needed, more twists and turns and curveballs. And so again, going back to this idea of laying this foundation, if you haven't started already, now is always a good time to start because you might need its benefit going forward.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's a great even context of where, we have our own journey, but we've also got to walk through journeys with other people who do things very differently. But I think some of the core things that are similar is to say, we've had a conversation. We've talked about what security means to one spouse than the other. We've evaluated where we're trying to get to, and we've put some systems in place that make that work. And I think everyone's done that, that's probably listening here by default, right? They have a default system that is working or not working, but it's something they're doing. But to really take a little moment and to connect with the other person. And I hear of a number of people like, well, we don't want to talk about it because we don't want to fight about it. Because money conversations turn
Real
into
talk.
fight conversations, right?
Hmm.
And that's probably, I think, sometimes why people work with an advisor, have a third party in the room, right? We joke a lot
Hmm.
that we are not therapists, but we're kind of like therapist adjacent as in terms of finances, because we're talking through hopes and fears and worries and even past scars and past histories of how
Hmm.
people have dealt with money.
It's emotionally driven across the board. And you hear people talk about in a marriage or in a couple, there's going to be a spender and a saver. Heaven forbid there's two spenders, good luck, or savers, and they're never willing to go take that vacation they've always dreamed of. So identifying kind of your personality type as well as your relationship to money. But one thing that I think is helpful to all of us, including me, is your mindset can change. Just because your background indicates your current
Mm,
relationship with money, it doesn't mean that your mindset can't shift going forward. So being open minded and approaching the financial conversation with your partner with a sense of curiosity, as well as trying to steer at clarity for both of you, because no doubt you come to the table with things that are most important to both of you. And some of that might be aligned and the same, and some of that might be quite different, like your appetite for risk or how insecure you feel or what questions you have, or even
mm.
your interest in knowing about financial matters. You frankly may not be very interested, but what's necessary to know going forward.
Yeah, that's great. I think the start of the conversation is it's not about winning the conversation. It's about finding clarity and an agreement and common ground and a way to move forward. And some people approach this, as you said, Laura, with a healthy moment, others don't. But either way, it can be different from this point forward. So I think some helpful questions to start these conversations is one to say, hey, I listened to the podcast and they talked about a financial conversation and we should talk about our finances, right? Easy enough. You heard us and so you brought it up. And then to say, here's three questions I think are useful. One, what does financial security mean to you? Man, that's a powerful one to unpack what people feel, what they don't feel. Next one, what kind of financial stress do you carry privately? I think this may be the most powerful one because I think people on a regular basis are holding on to something that they're in charge of and they may be excited about it, but often they're stressed about it. And the other spouse or other partner may not know, may not realize that trying to run a monthly budget and buy all the groceries is difficult.
And it's only going to be a powerful question if you're willing to be really honest about the answer.
Yeah, and open up. And then the third one, I think is the future looking is what kind of financial life are we trying to build? And I think those three are very powerful. Look at the history, looking at what's going on now, and then looking to the future and starting that conversation and having those initial foundation. And that might be the end of the first conversation, right? Talk through those and then say, hey, let's talk about this more later. And then the second one, I like, there's a quote of a lot of people don't need better spreadsheets, right? They need a safer space to discuss. I think that's kind of true, but there's also a lot of people who could deal with some tools. They could improve their lives if they had a couple of tools of how to lean into this. And we've seen, and we've even had ourselves where someone will build a spreadsheet. Hey, look, I've mastered it. Here it is. Let me show it to you. And the other partner, their face just kind of glazes over of, I don't know what this means. I don't know how this is supposed to track our future. I'm not sure what you're saying. And so often there'll be one partner who tends to look at spreadsheets, look at analytics and say, look, I figured it out. And the other may or may not engage in the same way. So I don't know that a spreadsheet is necessarily the answer, but I'll also say no spreadsheets and no tools is also not the answer.
Yeah.
There needs to be some rubber hits the road in this conversation.
Well, let's talk about some of the tools that we have found helpful. I have several that come to mind. One of the first ones that we mention all the time to our clients is having a shared password manager. I can't tell you how often I would be angry as I sat down to go check a balance on the credit card or whether or not a transaction had gone through or to pay a bill, just to find find out that the password had been changed and now I have to trigger a code to go to his cell phone, but he's in a meeting, so I'm not going to get the code, so I can't get the job done. So there was a lot of frustration born out of not sharing passwords because, as we all know, that we're going to have to update our passwords on a regular basis. So what we do is we have a password manager that's a paid for service. So we have both on our desktops and on our phones. And all you have to do is remember one password. But what you can do is share access to certain platforms with the designated person. So with all of our banking and our credit card, all that information, we can share reciprocal passwords with each other. So if I'm up late paying bills or checking a credit card balance and I'm prompted to change a password and I do so, it will automatically update in his password manager as well. So not only has that saved us some, maybe, I don't know, would we call them fights? Maybe some
That would
disagreements,
be a
some
fight. That'd be a
frustrations,
fight. Yeah, right. Why did
but
you
it
change the password? Yeah.
certainly made life a little bit easier and definitely more efficient. So I would start with the password manager. Jeremiah, do
Yes.
you want to talk about a budget app?
Sure. We are in the 21st century, right? There are some people who have spreadsheets and even handwritten budgets. We had someone come in this last week with a handwritten budget, but that is few and far between at this point. And I think it's unnecessary for a lot of people in most situations. There are a number of apps out there that you link it to your credit card and you link it to your bank account, and it will pull all of your spending and it will categorize it for you. They're not perfect. They usually use AI or some sort of algorithm, and you have to go in there and fix it. We had one, it was someone we'd pay for some babysitting, and I always thought it was a gas station. So we always had to go in and say, no, this is not fuel. This was paying for babysitting for someone who watched our kids. So you have to update those. But we've used a number of versions. And I think because we're in this space, we sign up for a lot of these just to test them out. There's one that we are using right now. It's called Copilot Money. It's not associated with Microsoft Copilot. As far as I know, it's just a separate company, but it's called Copilot Money. And the reason we're using it is it will link with Amazon. And so it has an integration. So for us, Amazon was becoming this black box of we spend on Amazon, but it just came through the credit card as Amazon. And we didn't really know what that was. And so by using this Copilot Money, it will link to Amazon. It will break out all those expenses and help you categorize them. So
Mm-hmm.
realize, oh, this was dish soap and this was kids' clothing and this was a gift for somebody else. And we could more granularly see what we're spending. And the thing
Mm-hmm.
that Laura and I both like about these budgeting apps is they don't have to be aspirational. It's not saying this is what I want to be. Ideally, I spend $10 a month and I make a whole bunch more and I have all this excess. We want to be realistic just to say, yeah, what did I really spend? If every month on a 12-month cycle, there is an emergency that comes up, well, you have to budget for that now. You can't just consider it something that happened as a one-off. As a quick story, we used to live in San Francisco and we would park our car, no
Oh, I'm
actual
feeling a
house
little
parking.
shamed already. Are you sure you want to
It's
tell this story?
it's me that's being shamed. It's mine. But we get enough parking tickets either by missing street sweeping, parking on the wrong street, or by overhanging some zone by an inch or something. They're very picky. That
Those
we had
meter
to
maids
start.
worked on overtime, I think,
Yes, that's
commission.
right. They must have. But we got so many tickets that we actually had to put a line item in our budget that said parking tickets. And not because we were intending to be bad parkers. We just knew if we didn't budget for it, it was going to be a surprise every month and our budget wasn't going to work. And so we put in, I don't know, 1.5 tickets a month or something, whatever. And with that new budget line, it covered over. And so we were able to fulfill our budget in other ways. But it's just
Right,
one example of something that we didn't want. It wasn't fun to put
right.
that in the budget. It was just realistic to say, hey, if we're living there with a street sweeping and what we were trying to do, we just happened to be getting parking tickets.
Right. If this conversation sounds familiar at all, where let's say you're talking to your partner and they say, well, how much do you think we spend on a monthly basis? Well, I mean, last month we spent X, but we had to put new tires on the car, but I signed up for this new subscription, but we had a vacation. So sometimes those comma, but we spent, those one off expenses really become kind of normalized expenses in terms of cash flow. And so going back to the budgeting apps, like Jeremiah said, they don't always have to be aspirational. One of the things that was really interesting when we first set it up, whether we're using Copilot Money, we have several clients using Monarch, there's several different products out on the market that are available. Choose one that works for you, but it would start to itemize our spending based on our credit card. We do most of our spending on one credit card, but you can link it to multiple. Let's say one partner has one credit card and the other one has the other, and certain expenses go on each one. Pull them all together into one budget, and it will start to analyze some of the data and track some trends. It could be that some of those things that you perceive are one off expenses actually do become reoccurring expenses. And what you want to start to do is kind of normalize some of your cash flow. Maybe November and December are seasons of higher spending because of the holidays. Maybe the summertime is a season of higher spending because of vacation. And then you've got some months that you just naturally don't spend as much money. Those are great things to know. And again, you want to come to this budget conversation without a sense of shame. I just made a joke there, but it was really important early on that it wasn't about, can I go buy this latte and spend $7? And is that okay? And shoot, I got another parking ticket, right? If you're always coming to the conversation with a sense of like shame or regret, it's not going to be a fun conversation to have. But if you come to the conversation seeking clarity, what is it that our household requires from a cash flow perspective? What are things that we anticipate are one-off expenses, but actually they kind of become normal expenses? So what you want to look for is kind of a cash flow or a sense of trends. This is how much we typically
Yep.
spend on a monthly basis.
Yeah. So I just will tell everybody this is the table stakes. This is the ground level. This is not the end of the conversation. Budgeting is not super fun, but I think it's just something you need visibility. It's like driving a car without a speedometer or without an oil gauge, without, right? You have to know the details. You have to know how quickly you guys are using anybody, how quickly you're going through your finances and what you need to run your household. But this is where the fun comes in, right? Once you kind of got that set, you say, okay, we need X amount of dollars to run our life on a monthly basis, on an annual basis. And if we're able to make more than that, what do we want that money to do? And this is where you have to battle the lifestyle creep that Laura mentioned earlier. Hey, we have a little extra money. Let's start eating out more. We have a little extra money. Let's buy some nicer clothes because we deserve it. We work hard. Not bad things, right? But if you're making those conscious choices, that's wonderful. If you're making those subconscious default decisions, and you're never getting ahead and you're never building finances that you're excited about, that's where you want to pay attention to that budget. But when you do have that extra, right, that little bit, that's where you look forward to that third question we talked about. What are we trying to build? What are we trying to get to? Do we want to just build up this large nest egg and die with a lot of money, right? Is that the plan? Do we want to provide experiences for ourselves and our kids that we never had? Do we want to be in such a place that we have no debt and we're just so secure that we never have to worry? Like all wonderful goals, no good or bad. It's just what you want to pick as a family unit, as a partnership to decide this is where we're heading. And to me,
Right.
like when we work with clients, even ourselves personally, when we get to the end of a month and you have a certain amount of money left over, if you know exactly where to put it and you're excited to put it there because it's building a future that you're thrilled about, that's the motivation and the structure that allows you to make good choices and really build from a place of, I know my budget, I know our goals. So let's, as we
Hmm.
get job promotions, as we get extra income, let's start building what we're
Yep.
excited about.
Yeah, the other point that I would make on building a budget is just values alignment. So, part of bringing that clarity is not just to the two of you as a couple, but also for you to look at how you spend your money and say, is this what's most important to
Mm,
me? And sometimes there's low hanging fruit. You don't realize, let's all just share for a minute in all those sneaky subscriptions that we signed up for, or you signed up for a 3-month free trial and then it rolled into a year long subscription. Even we do this as financial planners. So, if we're not keeping an eye on our spending, we might not be reminded that we signed up for those subscriptions and go in and cancel them. Or ask yourself the question, do I really use this? Is this really beneficial? Right? So it's just a practice of stewardship, I think. It's a practice of being organized. The other thing I would say there too is making sure that your household, what it requires cash flow wise to run your personal finances in your household, keep that separate from your business operations.
mm,
Sometimes those can be conflated depending on how your business is structured. It is helpful to have those two separated. And even if you're the spouse who isn't as, let's say, close to your finances, you're not checking your bank accounts on a daily basis, maybe you have the luxury of ample cash flow and so you just have freedom of spending. It is still helpful for you to have a sense of what cash flow is needed in terms of basic expenses to run your household, because that's going to start to indicate, like Jeremiah said, as you kind of pour over into having excess cash flow, what you choose to do with it. And so you just, again, just want to have visibility and clarity on the next steps. And this leads me to conversation and communication. So as you utilize some tools to create some clarity on your lifestyle, your current lifestyle, don't make any changes. Just look at it at first. Some of that might naturally lead to some changes. This might naturally lead to some conversation with your partner. And a lot of times people say, oh, we had that conversation months ago. Yep, we're aligned. It's fine. We're done. We have found, and this could be unique of the season of life that we're in too, where there's so many things changing. We have young kids in the home, so the activities that they're involved in, the expenses they have at school, it's constantly changing. And so this requires us to stay in communication with each other about our spending and our priorities, because they certainly change. And I'll tell
mm.
you, we have fell victim to say, okay, once a week on Wednesday night, when the kids get in bed, we're going to sit down and talk about our finances. How successful have we been at that?
I don't know if we ever did that. I mean, maybe once we had it happen. I think that part of that is at the end of a day when it's date night, right? It's a hard time to have this conversation in the evening after the kids are in bed. Maybe that's what works for some people. That's great. For us, we've tried to do a breakfast meeting. We've tried to do different things. And part of it, I think, is just not giving up, of saying, okay, what do we really
Mhm.
need to do to make sure that this is important? We both acknowledge it's important. We make some space for it. And then we utilize all the tools to make it as easy as possible. I think the budgeting apps are so helpful because they're taking out the hours of spreadsheets of having to log in expenses and things like that. They're doing a lot of that work for you so you can spend the
Mhm.
conversation time and the working time on making good choices about where you want to head.
We have a lot of things we could talk about on this subject matter. In addition to the password manager and the budget software, I would say developing a digital file for your finances is important. So, on a shared database or secure database, however you choose to do so. But let's say all of your insurance documents, your mortgage documents, your estate planning documents, making sure that you don't just have physical copies, but you have digital copies as well. And they're saved in a place where you both have access to them. We, because the work that we do in the financial planning space, get access to some planning software, which is helpful to make some projections and make multi year kind of future decisions for our finances. That has been really helpful for us as a couple. And so I would also recommend those resources as well. Obviously, having a team of people to support you in these financial conversations, if you find that you and your partner don't really enjoy or just have lots of questions or you aren't aligned, certainly seek out a resource. It could be a financial advisor, it could be an estate planning attorney, CPA. It could be all of those resources combined to make sure that your financial conversation is well supported with all the information, and certainly so that it's not just being prioritized by one partner in the relationship, because unfortunately you never know when that partner may not be around or may not be able to answer those questions. And so how vital it is for the other partner to at least know who to ask and where to find the information is absolutely essential.
Yep. That's right. Good comments. I think start today. Use this podcast as an excuse just to start the conversation. And I think the thrilling future is waiting for you. And I think part of unlocking it is having this unity and this clarity with your partner.
Woohoo. Thanks to all of our listeners. We hope you found some nuggets of wisdom, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Thanks. We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.